Sam, and I'm speaking today about Capricorn and the astrology sign ruled by Saturn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn also rules the second house of money, values, kind of stuff. The second house is related to our possessions and our clothes and our money. And so Capricorn, of course, ruled by Saturn, which shows that nature of stress, pressure, worry, maybe fear. And also the second house of money, possession, values. It shows where one of the main things Capricorn people have to be careful of, as shown by the first lord ruling the second, is turning everything into a commodity. Everything being some kind of value proposition. Like everything is just what I get from it, because that's actually what the second house is. It's what we get from what we do. And how you can tell a person's true nature by their, by the things they have, their real values, by the things they have, the possessions, the words they say, the food they eat. And so Capricorn can tend to turn everything into that sort of quantifiable, measurable, solid thing. And in particular, they need to be careful, I should say, not to turn people into extensions of their own sort of tangible domain. This is where we can see a kind of strategic and even manipulative quality that Capricorn can have and not even realize that's what's happening, because instead of a person just being a person, they're some quantity of something that I might get at some point. Now again, it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's also a positive. They also are responsible for that. Let's just say family members. They feel deeply, duty bound to take care of their family, to provide for their family. But they also can tend to see members of their family as extensions of themselves. Like, you're not you, you're my child, and I provide for my child, and since I've provided, I have a certain amount of control, and part of my identity revolves around you as my child, and these people as extensions of my material world. You can see how it shifts all of a sudden, right? Like everything, it's subtle. And because Capricorn, of course, it's a Tamasic sign, it's ruled by Tamasic Saturn, which is kind of fear-based. It's also emotional, psychological, and internal. So it's where we tend to feel that worry and stress about the pressure of time in our heart. So we want to stabilize and control things, make them, and we want to produce some tangible result, like some money, some people around us, to take care of us in our old age, and we're very practical, a lot of money, big family, big house. But then we have the attachment to it as well, and it's something that we have and we own, and there's a possessiveness and a controlling quality that Capricorn needs to always be careful of. But in general, they have very deep, deeply held values and convictions. They don't change easily, but they need to really evolve their sort of value equation and sort of money equation throughout their life. Now we see Jupiter rules the third and the 12th houses. So again, Jupiter is the planet of teaching, guru, higher wisdom, and it shows where things change, based on what inspires us. It's not practical at all. It's not, practical, tangible, measurable. Jupiter is abstract. But it's a planet that can lead to sort of greediness and over materiality for them. At least that's how they initially encounter Jupiter energy. As the third house ruler, it rules the ego of wanting to grow and expand, but also the loss that comes as a result, which means the loss, because it also rules the 12th house. It's a planet that shows them and teaches them the nature of true discrimination and the losses of the ego. And in many ways, the losses of the ego compel them to higher awareness and consciousness. losses of the ego, 3rd and 12th house, compel them to higher teaching, higher wisdom, because it's Jupiter. Hopefully, it can also compel them to just work harder to try to get more stuff. Again, that's the evolutionary curve with Jupiter. Mars winds up being the 4th and 11th house ruler. Again, very ambitious 11th house ruler. It's Mars going for those ambitions with a lot of force. The force, their courage and will and willingness to fight. Mars is for things that give him more stuff, more money, more status, more recognition. And it also rules the 4th house of their heart and their emotional state. So underneath it all, the symbol of Capricorn is the crocodile. I like to use that, not a goat or sea goat, the crocodile. The crocodile inside's got this Mars heart. It's a scaly, tough animal. And so Capricorn, they're a tough animal. They have a lot of, courage. Their heart is a scaly crocodile. Mars, this primal reptilian brain, is deep in their heart, and it gives them the courage to go out and grab something, right? So again, as you can see, it's a functional malefic because it rules the 11th house, but it shows where they have that restless heart. And many times from that restless place, they try to accomplish things. And instead, of course, they need to have the courage to confront that inner reptile and not just sort of, you might say, inflict it on others as a way to kind of, get the biggest piece of meat and take care of their little, family. So, like all Saturn-ruled people, Venus winds up being quite a gentle, graceful, and beautiful planet. It rules the 5th house of their deeper creativity and the things they love. And of course, the things they love are also related to the 10th house of their work, duties, responsibilities. So this shows how one of the best things you can do with a Capricorn person is literally give them some responsibility. Give them especially some responsibility that's going to improve people's lives. They're extremely dedicated, devotional, humble people. If you give them something that's going to improve another person's life or other people's lives. Again, they can be kind of unconsciously sort of ruthless with that unconscious Mars rule in the 4th and 11th. But once you connect them with people and culture and Venus stuff, where they can show up and be gracious, you see their higher, loving, creative mind emerge. They love nothing more. Like, let's just say at work. It's very simple. It doesn't have to be so abstract. They're great managers at work. And it doesn't even have to be a job that's their big swadharma, but even just in an office or whatever. They're great when you give them responsibility, because one of the main things they want to do is, they make the office a place where people like to work. They're not controlling and nasty at all. I mean, they still have that 2nd house, like, you're all part of my possessions, you're all part of my world. But especially in the workplace, it's great because there's a boundary. They can go home and kind of dominate their family, 2nd house. But in the workplace, they bring all that Venus, creativity, love, beauty. So they can be great like managers, especially when you give them responsibility. And of course, especially if it's aligned with something you really believe in and care about. So Venus really is a wonderful planet for them. That's why I always try to get, Capricorn people doing something creative, especially in groups or in the world. Not just utilitarian, not just to make money or to get ahead or, get the stuff they want. And, often they'll tell themselves, well, I got to take care of my family, and you'll just hear the thing go over again, the reason why they're programmed that way. We're just sort of programmed around these, these qualities. And Mercury has a lot to do with shifting. Mercury is the 9th house ruler, which shows their higher wisdom and purpose, and they are very much seekers. Mercury makes them very creative about ways, first of all, to fix problems, because it also rules the 6th house. The other thing that a Capricorn loves is, give me some problems to fix. This is why even like at work and the same kind of thing. They really love to make the place beautiful for the people, and when the people have problems, they're like, oh good, problem to fix, yippee. Mercury kicks in. They enjoy it, they like it, they're creative, intelligent, and they really learn a lot of life lessons by their capacity and ability to figure things out, find higher solutions. And again, if you just spiral this upward, it's not just about at work, but then in your life, as they start facing problems in their world and the other kinds of things about their own nature, Mercury makes them very curious. And again, especially once they start seeing that the things they're doing aren't working. Often it starts with something like, I'm trying to make some money and it's not working, what do I do? Or I'm trying to get this thing, it's not working, what do I do? Eventually they realize, no matter what I'm trying to do in the world, or all of my controlling behavior with my family, or all of these other things aren't working, what do I do? Then they become very philosophical. And Mercury is that planet that brings that higher philosophy. And they actually enjoy it. They're very dedicated. I love Capricorn, like students and devotees or whatever. They're very humble and they'll do the work. You usually got to get them off the worry. They just tend to worry too much about, but what happens? I'm not going to get it done fast enough, or those kinds of things. Again, Mars gives that restlessness in their heart, and there's always just this ambition. Well, okay, I've learned it, but now what do I do with it to make it big? And it's one of the big signs. And then their 7th house is ruled by the moon. So again, you want to see this very sensitive heart that they have, that they are trying to protect. And again, a crocodile, of course it's a tough animal, but it's actually pretty feeble on land. Now, of course, it's not like a lot of things can take it on because it's big and scaly. Not a lot of predators. It's a pretty much close to an apex predator, but lions and anacondas and other animals, when they're on land, they're kind of vulnerable. So the point being that even the animal, the crocodile, feels that emotional vulnerability. So the moon rules their 7th house. One of the reasons why why they can be so serious and so worried is because they have such a vulnerable, fragile heart. Especially in relation to others, they can be very socially awkward and insecure because their relation to others is the moon, which is always trying to feel if others like them. And of course, since they're ruled by Saturn, they often feel isolated and kind of separate. And then they get around others and they want to flow, they want to connect. That's the nature of the moon. I want you to like me, I don't want to feel alone and isolated and separate. So then they can get their feelings hurt. So the moon ruling their 7th house shows they're very sensitive, they're usually very good partners. Again, you got to look at the things like the controlling and all that, but I mean, as far as they'll stay in it with you, they'll hang in there. And they're very sensitive. And if they've hurt your feelings, usually they feel it very deeply and they're sorry. And usually it's the opposite issue with Capricorn. You got to get them out of depression and being self-absorbed in their own emotions because they're so sensitive and all of that. You can see similar themes with Cancer, right? This is how the signs have the opposite correlation. But then finally you see that the Capricorn, the sun rules the 8th house, so the light comes into their life through the 8th house. They're inherently aware of the fragile nature of the world. They're inherently aware that life is going to end, that it's very fragile, that we need to be vigilant, that we're not in control, that we need to maintain some control. This is why they can exert that kind of focus through as a matter of their identity. They're really keenly aware of that fragile nature, and it also shows why they go through a lot of personal change and transformation, as the sun really lights them up through the 8th house of change, transformation, but also their fears, their emotional fears, their lack of control. And so again, this is why you see them exert quite a bit of control over their family and all those things I said at the beginning, which are somewhat negative traits. It's motivated by this awareness that, well, things are fragile and we need to be careful, and as long as I can do something about it, I'm going to try to do it. So they really take that on per the nature of Saturn, which gives them a lot of responsibility and duty and pressure. But again, they need to learn the nature of self more and not identify themselves so much as this physical body that's going to die and all that vulnerability that they experience with the sun as the 8th lord, then they'll release a lot of that control that they have over people in their environment and things like that. And they'll just be more supportive and less controlling. And you know, the problem in this issue is when we identify ourselves as a matter of identity with these people around us. This is how parents can be bad parents, or we can be bad friends. When we have some discrimination and some dispassion, then you're free to do what you want. I still possess my own salvation and my own identity. When we wrap our identity up in the other person and what they do, then we try to control and manipulate it so that what you do makes me feel good, which is like, that's going to be hard to deal with. So this is what this is what Capricorn needs to work on in that regard.